Greetings. Thank you again for coming to another episode of the Many Hats of Coco, a fine arts interview program that we have. And my name's Theo Juk. I'll be the host today. And today I'm excited because we have a poet, a publisher, and a dancer, a famous dancer, to join us today. C. Stephen Blue. Stephen, care to join me? Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. All right. So we have a lot to talk about. We have a cut time because I'm going to ask you to perform for us today. Uh-oh. So I have actually read a couple of Stephen's books of poetry, and they beg for rhythm. He wrote them in the context of what he has defined as a word song, and maybe the best thing I could do is let you describe what a word song is.
Oh, okay. Well, the key word you said was rhythm. I've been playing percussion all my life, and so rhythm kind of naturally fits into my poetry, which I've also been doing pretty much most of my life. My poetry has been pouring out of me since I was a boy. And so just to describe a word song, I have a whole series of books. You can see them here. There's 3 right now in the series. There's about 3 more planned. And basically a word song is a poem that is like a song or could be a song. Mm-hmm. And so I did a whole series of these because I write many, many poems that way. It's not the only way I write, but I do write a lot of poems that are like lyrics.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I did notice when you say they're like lyrics, they're set up like songs oftentimes with a refrain or a chorus line. So that was kind of fun. So the poem had a rhythm outside the words. That was happening. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of fun. And how long have you been doing this?
Well, like I said, my poetry's been pouring out of me pretty much since I was a boy. I won my first poetry award when I was 12 years old. Mm. And I didn't really start writing seriously, I think, until I was about 18. But then I've been writing ever since. Mm-hmm. Finally took to publishing my work when my wife and I retired here to Oregon about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get my work out there more, and I had so many different themes and structures of different types of things I have written. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to put them into categories and put them into books. So that's what I've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years. And I now have 6 books of poetry of my own work published.
Mm-hmm. And you also are a publisher.
Yes.
Just mention that a little bit too.
Okay.
As a writer, it intrigues me.
Well, thank you. I'm a local publisher here in Eugene. Besides publishing my own work, I've published other poets. I've published a full-length book from one of the local poets here in Eugene. And I've also donated my publishing. I published a book for the city of Eugene during their sesquicentennial in 2012.
Really? What's the name of that book?
It's called the Eugene Poetry 150th Poetry Anniversary Collection.
Oh, wow.
It has 30 poets in it, local Eugene poets, and 2 local artists. And it has all themes of poetry about Eugene or about Oregon. Mm-hmm. So I published that for the city. It was a benefit for the Eugene Public Library, and we were part of the big sesquicentennial celebration. Mm-hmm. I also donated some publishing for the Oregon Poetry Association. They do a student writers contest, poetry writing contest every year, and the winners get published for the first time in a book, and they have different publishers donate the publishing each year. And so one year I donated my work to publish the book for their contest as well.
And people at home that might want to explore this, where would they find?
They would find it, they'd find my work at www.wordsongs.com.
pretty
So
easy.
word songs is easy to find, yes.
I had a couple interesting questions for you. Your history, your bio dancing on TV in high school in the 60s, met Dick Clark and all that stuff?
Yes, oh yeah. Well, you know, the 60s was quite a time. I would never trade anything for having grown up in the 60s. It was a multi-dimensional time. I danced pretty much all through high school. I was a regular on American Bandstand, like you said. I get teased about it a lot. And another local show that was syndicated called Shebang. The host was Casey Kasem. You might remember him from American Top 40.
Right, yes.
His show was fabulous because it was more fun. American Bandstand was more like a business. I mean, you went in there on a Saturday and they taped 6 shows, and you had to bring 6 changes of clothes to dance on every one of those shows. And Shebang was on with Casey Kasem was on every day after school, and so we'd go to the local syndicated television station, which was KTLA in Los Angeles, California, and taped the show after school. And it was fun because Casey really seemed to bring on all the new bands that were just coming out and just getting big. So had a chance to experience many of those bands as well as dancing, fun.
What a great experience. Defining moments in your life. I always like to ask this of poets, especially.
Defining moments. Well, I would have to say publishing my first book, 1992. And it was called Word Songs. It was the original edition of Word Songs. I self-published that book back when self-publishing was in its infancy. And back then, you couldn't just publish a book. You had to have distribution. You had to buy the book from a book manufacturer, which meant if you were self-publishing, you had to buy a minimum of 1,000 books to even get published. You know, you had to do all the cover artwork and the manuscript layout by hand, physically, on paper, and then turn it in for processing. So it was much different than the digital world now of desktop publishing, where you know you can do all the designing and book layout and manuscript layout in software.
Yes,
Much easier.
You also, besides being a publisher and a poet, you host and organize a number of poetry and art events.
I do.
In the greater Eugene area.
Yes.
Yeah. Care to share any of that with us?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of my way of giving back something to the community, of promoting arts, of bringing other poets into exposure, giving them a chance to expose their work. I love producing events. It's really a lot of fun because just like you do on this show, I bring poetry and art together. I had a series at Eugene Public Library for 3 years. That was a poetry workshop on a Saturday, basic poetry workshop, where my motto was, even if you've never written poetry in your life, you will be writing a poem by the time you leave here today. And so then that was a basic poetry workshop open to anybody, you know. And then the following week would be a poetry showcase, where I would invite local poets and poets all around Oregon to come and share their work. And so I've continued that in doing, now I do summer events, and then when the winter starts again, actually in October, we'll be starting up a program that I host at the local Barnes & Noble bookstore, which is called Burning Down the Barns. I co-host it with my poet friend Charles Castle, and it's a monthly literary reading and open mic series.
Oh, wow, how
where we
nice.
have different authors, not just poets, other kinds of writers. So we have 2 featured authors each month, and then we'll have an open mic for an hour after the featured reading. And that's on the second Sunday of every month, Eugene Barnes & Noble, 3 to 5 p.m., starting up again in October.
And I'm sure, once again, we can find out about that at www.
Let's see, do I have information on there? Yes, on my blog. There's a blog on my website, and you will find information about the Barnes & Noble reading there.
Great.
We have
good.
a lot of fun with that.
Good. I look forward to making one of those soon. When do you fire them up again?
In October. So
October.
second Sunday in October.
Okay.
We're going to have a big send-off this season with a very big Oregon author, William Sullivan.
I know him well.
You know him well, yes. So he'll be starting off our series this year.
Oh, wonderful.
With another fine writer named Bill Sarnoff, who's 91 years old, and writes memoirs. So,
Coco, I understand you had a great summer this summer.
Marvelous, dear, marvelous.
Marvelous.
But I have a question now.
But we have some questions now. Okay.
Have you had the opportunity to read in other cities?
yes,
Which cities?
I have actually performed from coast to coast. Not too long ago, let's see, I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before now. Time is flying these days. The older you get, the faster it goes. I had the opportunity to read my work at the Bitter End in Greenwich Village, which was a dream of a lifetime. It was my first time ever in New York, and I got to read there. It was a lot of fun. I read in California. I've read, in various places. So I love reading anywhere when given an opportunity, and performing. I perform my work. I don't just read it. So I perform my poetry with music and hand drums. So
Very nice.
much like my word songs.
You mentioned that you write in themes. What are some of the examples of the themes you write about?
Themes. Well, I told you about my word song series. Those are poems that are like songs. I write fantasy poetry, science fiction, love poetry, romance. I have one book that is completely romantic and erotic poetry. Not for everybody, but for the discerning taste. I write a lot of political poetry. And my baby is this book right here, Songs of Sobriety. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I have almost 30 years in recovery now. And I wrote this book. It took me over 20 years to write, and it's basically the story of the first 10 years of recovery told in chronological order in verse. So recovery is a very big topic for me as well.
Were there any wages that you earned for your work on your TV shows?
No.
No, it's all for free, huh? Did
We
you get
did it-
notoriety
We
at
did
school?
it for oh my God, we were
We're artists.
everywhere. Everywhere we went.
We
you
don't
know,
need those stinking funds.
We had so much fun dancing. I danced, because of the dancing on TV, I ended up being able to dance in contests all over Southern California, where I grew up, for probably 2 years in high school. It was a marvelous time.
So did you get recognized in public because of it?
Yeah, there was a little bit of that. Maybe that was my 15 minutes of fame. I'm hoping there's a little more here in the poetry world.
Couple more minutes coming.
Yeah, a couple more minutes.
And when you were dancing in those bands in the 60s, did it influence your poetry?
Oh yeah, the romance part. I wrote a lot of love poetry early on. So I'd say that's probably where the influence was. And maybe in the rhythm too, because dancing is so rhythmic, and I play percussion, I put so much rhythm into a lot of my work. So it probably influenced it that way.
And one more.
And I have one more. Okay, which of the books might we be able to buy here today?
You could buy any of my books, depending on what you're looking for. I told you about the romantic poetry, the recovery poetry, the word song series. But I also have a book called Wild Weed. And I'm going to be performing the title poem from that book. Is that okay?
Yeah, no,
Or do we wanna
actually,
yeah.
boy, you guys are blowing my gig. I finally have something to question.
Okay, so
No, that's what we're gonna do.
Wild Weed.
Here, go ahead. While we.
Okay, so let
No.
me tell you about the book real
Yes,
quick.
yes.
This book is completely handmade by me in my home studio, and it is a basic overview of the different styles of poetry that I write. So if you wanted to get something that has a little bit of all my styles in it, that would be the one.
Well, the segue was that we've been sitting here talking so much about the word songs and how much music is a part of your poetry. I would like to invite you to share some of your word songs with us and give us a little bit performance as we go out of the show.
Okay. I will. I will be glad to do that.
So what we're going to do, just take a moment. We're just going to move this out and move a couple pieces in, and we're going to enjoy Stephen's word songs.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to share two pieces with you today. The first one is the title poem from my chapbook, Wildweed. My stuff is rough. It's bare bones. I hate to answer telephones. I want to look you in the eyes when we speak. But there ain't no use in this fast-paced world to ride a horse or court a girl. If you take your time to get there, she's just moved on. And what becomes of the alley cat on the night of the hard-driving rain, when the lightning speaks loud and everyone crowds in the shelter of warm window panes? I live my life in a pot-bellied stove. I'm an oak tree with ages to tell. I'm the earthquake commander, a green salamander, a salesman with nothing to sell. But did you see me on the night of the new, when everything changed in an instant? The air was so clean and the grass was so green that a new age did not seem so distant. In the quiet, an angel calls, awakened by the engine stalls of the inner city, pondering its sleep. The dream is a draftsman, a hill-dwelling craftsman, a step in a puddle on the road to forever, and life is a boat in a great castle moat. We all circle, yet must row together. Now is then, and yesterday's tomorrow, but how can we live it like we mean it, when we're running so fast that the race cannot last, and the space in between lies unseen? Or is that to lay in a meadow and ponder the meaning of the wild blue yonder, the stars at night, or a daffodil? The momentum is great as it rolls down the hill of imagination gone to seed. I'm a wildweed. Why do I feel so safe in the rain and long to sit behind waterfalls? I gaze at blue crystal, I tell tattered tales, and listen when eternity calls. Maybe this just goes on and on, or maybe the hunger can't fathom the dawn. It's the spark in the dark behind your eyes when you sleep just the moment, and then it is gone, and you weep. Sheltering skies pour forth from your eyes and germinate the seed of my fast-growing need. I'm a wildweed. Yes, I'm a wildweed. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to do another piece for you. This one is with a musical accompaniment. Also, I just want to mention I'm wearing a very special hat today. So some people will know what that means and others won't, but that's okay. So I'm going to do a poem from one of my newer books called Word Songs 2. And this is a piece that I recently wrote some music for with my friends Brian Burton on guitar and Dave McLeod on bass. And it is called Tempted by an Angel. Tempted by an angel, speaking words of love. Tempted by an angel, a vision from up above. She was the angel of your dreams. She was speaking the words of love. Tempted by an angel is all you were guilty of. You did the best you could, worked hard to make things right. But no matter how hard you try, some things just don't work out in this life. You paved the road to the Garden of Eden. You even made her your wife. But in the end, she left you with nothing but guilt for the strife. Tempted by an angel, speaking words of love. Tempted by an angel, a vision from up above. She was the angel of your dreams. She was speaking the words of love. Tempted by an angel is all you were guilty of. You just can't seem to find someone willing to commit like you do. Yet you've still got your children and your dreams to carry you through. But you still see that sparkle that shines in her eyes. You still remember it all. No matter how you try to ignore it, sometimes you still hear the angels call. Tempted by an angel, speaking words of love. Tempted by an angel, a vision from up above. She was the angel of your dreams. She was speaking the words of love. Tempted by an angel is all you were guilty of.
I would like to thank C. Stephen Blue for joining us today. It's been so much fun. Thank you for
Thank you for
joining
having me.
us. Yes.
Thanks so much.
Do you want to do a few dance steps from way back when? Yeah, you have the floor.
You have the floor.
I want to thank everybody personally. Thank you so much for joining us. To you. Thank you.